After the intensity of the November internationals, it's back to the bread and butter of the URC. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. As I said, URC returning, but the November internationals aren't actually completely over. We do have Ireland versus Australia on Saturday. There will be a preview of that up in the channel tomorrow. But URC coming back now. It's been on a bit of a break. Teams now, for teams who haven't started the season maybe all that well, good chance for them to reset. For those that, did start it well, good chance to hopefully pick up from where they left off. And also, we've got one round now, then we're going to have 2 weeks, I think, off because we're going to have the European, Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup as well coming in. So it's a, great opportunity for get a positive result and go in there with full of confidence into the start of your European season as well before coming back then for the Christmas and New Year fixtures as well. So I always feel that this is a very important point of the season in the URC because we've already had a third of the season, and for some teams they've they start well, they're up there near the top, and they have a chance now to cement that and give themselves a good run in to the end of the season, and then other ones that are there or thereabouts could maybe make some moves and get into that top eight as well. So, a lot to play for, I think, in this round here. So we're going to go down through each of the fixtures as usual, talk about both teams, how they've done so far this year and how I think the game is going to go. So we're going to start with the Friday games, and first Friday, November 29th, 7:35 kickoff. It's Glasgow Warriors versus Scarlets. It's second versus sixth, and it's at Scotstoun Stadium. So starting with the Warriors, second at the table, they've won 4 of their 6 games. Their 2 defeats, like opening round, 1 point defeat to Ulster, definitely should have won that. I still absolutely believe that. And then, before the November break, they did their tour down to South Africa as well. They had a 4 point loss to the Sharks, but their last game out was an 11 point win against the Stormers. So that's pretty good, doing well, honestly, down in South Africa there. And, coming off as well, a lot of those players coming back from the Scotland squad, and even I don't know whether they're going to play or not, but even if they don't, there's still going to be a buzz around because Scotland had a pretty good November, other than the game against South Africa. Then Scarlets, a team who I think have been doing pretty well, and I talked about earlier in the season when after the first 3 games there was people talk about pressure being on Dwayne Peel. I couldn't understand it because they'd actually started pretty well and they looked more competitive, way more competitive than they were last year. Then they started winning on top of that as well. So they started off with that draw away to Benetton. Then they had a loss to Cardiff, and then very narrow loss to Connacht, which they probably should have won. And that's where I think the criticism came in, was that they didn't win a game that looked like they were set to win. But then they went on 3 game winning streak, beat Cardiff in the second of those 2 games. I don't know why. Like in the first 4 rounds, they played each other twice. It's a bit crazy to me. Then they beat the Bulls. Excellent, result from them there. Especially the Bulls were really flying high when they played each other as well. And then a very comfortable win against Zebre as well last time out. It was a while ago, but still, 3 game winning streak. Those guys, and some of them I think as well coming out of the Welsh squad are going to be happy just to get back, um, into the kind of environment here in the Scarlets, compared to, because it can't be nice, no matter what players talk about how everybody's pulling in the right direction, and they're all kind of happy with Warren Gatland being there and etc. But if it's just loss after loss after loss, like it does have to, it does affect you, I think. So coming back to the Scarlets, where they've been winning more games, certainly going to be good for those players. But let's think about how the game is going to go. So Glasgow, defending champions, they've looked good in all, even in their 2 defeats this year. They've looked pretty good, and Now, again, I don't know how many of the players who played in the November internationals are going to actually play in this, but I do feel like that they have good squad depth. You don't win the URC by just having a decent first 15. You have to have the squad depth there as well. So, given that, I think this is going to be a Glasgow win, and probably I think it's going to be one of those where Glasgow in the last 20 minutes won't be sweating on the result either. I think they're going to either have a margin going into the last 20 minutes, or they're going to pull away at that stage. The next game then is Irish Derby, so it's Ulster versus Leinster. Ulster did a double over Leinster last year. This one also on Friday, November 29th, and also 7:35 kickoff. It's 7 versus first at the Kingspan Stadium, and I said, yeah, Ulster did the double over Leinster last year. They've been up and down this year, honestly, and it's hard to see where they really are as a team at the moment. I think coming towards the end of after the kind of Christmas period or so, we might get a better idea of where Ulster really are as a team. But they started off with that win against Glasgow. They had other wins as well. They beat Connacht and they beat Ospreys. They beat Ospreys pretty handily. But they've also had 3 losses. So they lost against the Lions and the Bulls down in South Africa. Didn't really cover themselves any glory down there. And then lost against Cardiff last time out as well. And, they really kind of blew that one because they were well ahead 19-0. I think they were up at halftime or something like that. And ended up losing the game. I think was it 21-19 or something. It was a 2-point loss anyway. Then Leinster, they've gone 6 from 6. Haven't looked like they hit first gear for a lot of the games. Tight game against Edinburgh to start. Then pretty easy win against the Dragons. So the Dragons looked competitive in that game. Then cruised it against Benetton. They actually looked pretty good against Munster. That's where I felt like they kind of stepped things up a bit. Then pretty easy win against Connacht, and last time out then against the Lions as well. Fairly comfortable win for them. So this might be a test for them. Going up to Kingspan where they lost last season. We don't know what the teams are going to look like, because obviously most of Leinster's first team, if not the entire first 15, are away with Ireland at the minute. And Ulster have a few players in there, but certainly not as much as Leinster. So it's going to be a big test of Leinster's depth to go up there. But given that Ulster kind of up and down a little bit, it's tough because I'm a Leinster fan. So this one is tough to call. My head is one of these ones where head and heart are different. Head is saying Ulster should probably win it. Sorry, I got a bit of a cold, so my nose is running. But Ulster should probably win it given how many Leinster players are out. But I've a sneaking feeling Leinster is still going to produce in this one, because you're going to have the likes of Ross Byrne there with a point to prove, I think, and a few others as well, the likes of Deegan maybe, and some of the wider squad there that maybe feel like even though there's tons of Leinster players in the other squad, that maybe they were overlooked for Ireland as well. So I think Leinster are probably going to pick that one. Starting the games, we have 3 o'clock kickoff. It's Sharks versus Stormers. So I might be wrong, but is this I think it might be the first South African derby of the year. I know they had ones in the first round or something were postponed until I think during the Six Nations. But yeah, it might be the first one. But 9th versus 13th, it's at Hollywood Met Kings Park. So Sharks obviously last year won the Challenge Cup, but really poor in the league. Stormers kind of stormed back, as it were, in the league, but then kind of fell over in the knockout rounds. So both teams outside the playoffs at the minute. One of them has a chance now with a win here, probably to boost themselves up into those positions there. If you look at it, like Sharks are just 1 point behind Scarlets, Ulster, and Cardiff, so that's 6 down to 8. And then Stormers, they won't, with a bonus point win would probably get them on 11 points with the Sharks, depending on Sharks get a bonus point, so they can't quite get up into the top 8, but certainly put themselves in position to get up there. If we look at how the season started from then, so Sharks, open with that loss against Connacht, and then beat Dragons. I think both of those were like 30 odd points each. I think it was 36-30 against Connacht, and then maybe 33-30 they won against Dragons, I think. Uh, then lost heavily against Benetton after that, but they had 2 wins after that. Good win against Glasgow by 4 points, and they did have like all of their box in that one. But if you have that many box, well, why not play them, right? And then they beat Munster as well pretty comfortably. So coming off some decent results there, and there's a big core of their team that was with the box as well. Again, we don't know how many of those guys are actually going to feature, whether they're going to be given the week off to prepare for European rugby next week or not. Next, then we have the Stormers. So started off, losing by 13 points, sorry, against Ospreys, which kind of thought that, well, Ospreys looked good last year, and maybe that was part of it. But then the Ospreys looked, after that, fairly abject, honestly. It was the only probably decent result the Ospreys have had. Certainly the opening kind of 3 or 4 rounds of the season. Then bounce back, big win against Zebre. But then kind of up and down after that, like lost to Edinburgh, heavily. And at that stage, it was a point where Edinburgh hadn't started the season all that well either. So one of the two teams was going to get a boost from it, and it was Edinburgh to come out on the right side of that. Then they beat Munster pretty handily. Munster on a bit of a downwards trajectory, but still a 15-point win. And then they lose against Glasgow at home after that. So, not brilliant for them. And they really do need to find a win, just to settle the ship a bit. And, if I really do believe that, Storms have ambitions to, do a bit better in Europe this year. And again, we talked about getting that momentum going into the European fixtures. So a win here really would give them a boost. But given the form the two teams have been in so far, I've got to go for a Sharks win in that one, I think. Okay, on to the next one then, and it is Cardiff versus Dragons. So this one is a 5:15 kickoff. It's 8 versus 15th. It's at Cardiff's Arms Park. Cardiff, one of two Welsh teams currently in the top 8, so certainly doing a lot better than we've seen kind of Welsh teams doing in the URC era to date. And they look at it like Cardiff, they opened with a 5-point win against Zebre. They were kind of cruising it, and then Zebre came back a bit in that one. Then they beat Scarlets. Then they had a poor run of form, lost against the Glasgow, then Scarlets in the return, and then lost against Edinburgh as well. So losing to both Scottish teams, and then come back and had a 2-point win against Ulster. Again, kind of really turned the game around there, because luckily Ulster were cruising to the victory there. Dragons then had an opening win against Ospreys, and you thought, okay, well, maybe Dragons are going to be a bit better this year, but then they sunk down, kind of the way Zebre did as well, down to their usual position down there towards the foot of the table. Lost heavily against Leinster, then close loss against Sharks, close loss against the Lions, then 10-point loss against Benetton, and then a heavyish loss against Connacht as well. So, five defeats on the trot for the Dragons, and you honestly think it's going to be another defeat here as well. So, going to go for Cardiff in that one. Next, 5:30 kickoff on the Saturday again. It's Connacht versus the Bulls. This is 5th versus 3rd at the Dexcom Stadium in Galway. So this is kind of an interesting one, because again, Connacht going to be without kind of some of their star players that are away. with Ireland, the likes of Mac Hansen, Bunya Key, and Keane Prendergast, all in there, and then like Finley Beelum as well. So a big kind of core of their team there with Ireland, and some really important big game players as well. So you know, look at the form. Connacht, they won 3 of their 6 games so far. Bulls have won 4 of the 5. So Bulls definitely one of the form teams, and they play the game less. So you'd probably think that at this stage they might be up there mixing it with Leinster and Glasgow. That's how good their season has been. Connacht, they lost by 2 points to Munster in the opening round. Probably should have been a draw in that game, honestly, given how the two teams were shaping up. Then they beat the Sharks after that. Narrow win against Scarlets, but they showed a lot of character really to win that right into death. Then come back and kind of the opposite when they lost to Ulster by 5 points. Then 21 points to Leinster defeat, and not really in the game in that one. And then they bounced back then with a big win against the Dragons. But you look at the Bulls then, beat Edinburgh by 6 points. Then Ulster by 26 as their games at home. Then they beat Ospreys by 10 points. One loss of the season then was away to Scarlets by a single point. And then back with a 2 point win against Benetton. So, it started really well and then kind of tapered off a little bit as we came to the break for the November internationals. And this is a tough one to call. I'm going to go with my heart in this one, and again, it's another head versus heart thing. And I'm going to back a Connacht win in that one. Okay, next then we have Edinburgh versus Benetton. So this one is a 7:35 kickoff. It's 10 versus 11. It's the highest stadium. So two teams who have been up and down a little bit in the season. And again, it's one of those games where kind of similar to Sharks versus the Stormers, where the winner is going to get that boost going into Europe, but also in the league as well. And we look at this, Edinburgh very competitive against Leinster, losing by 2 points in the opener. Then losing by 6 points against the Bulls, not terrible when they went down to South Africa, but then very that what was it, 40 odd points or something against the Lions to nil at half time. A little bit of a rally in the second half, but still lost by 30 odd points. Then bounce back then against the Stormers with a very comfortable win by 30 odd points in that one. Beat Cardiff by somewhere around 20 points, I think, after that. And then lost to Ospreys, which, again, it shows you how up and down they are, because Ospreys haven't had a brilliant start to the season. And you would have thought that, winning that would have seen them kind of within that kind of top 8 at this stage. And now they try and get that momentum back, and kind of similar to Benetton, really. Started with a draw against the Scarlets, which for them wasn't a great result. Then they lose heavily to Glasgow, lose heavily to Leinster, get things a little bit back on track with a comfortable win against the Sharks, and then they beat the Dragons by 10 points. But then last night, then losing to the Bulls by 2 points as well. So this is another one that's going to be a close one to call. I think home advantage. I'm going to give the edge to Edinburgh. I'm going to go for Edinburgh win in that one. Then another 7:35 kickoff. It's Munster versus the Lions. This is 12th versus 4th, and it's at Thomond Park in Limerick. So, Munster, you think Graham Roundtree is gone during the week then, and the Kyriakou, the forwards coach, has left as well. So a lot of upheaval there, kind of similar to Ulster last year. And you're thinking, at this stage, could their whole season just go off the rails? And then you think, there's players away with Ireland as well, the likes of Crowley, Casey, Murray, Peter O'Mahony. A lot of kind of the leadership group really are away at the minute. But then you do have, players who maybe feel aggrieved, the likes of Gavin Coombs and stuff, who will feel like they have something to prove as well there. So could be a bit of a bounce for them. It depends really whether they're going to adopt that kind of siege mentality that you kind of, you see more of it in soccer or football, in rugby, because we don't generally see in rugby where coaches or head coaches leaving mid-season. It's kind of a newer phenomenon for us, and it's something that probably unfortunately we're going to have to get used to because of we don't know why round three left, but there must be more pressure in the game now, given there's more money in it, etc. It's not where I want the game to go. I hope that we kind of go back to that tradition of you know give the coach until the end of the season, and if things aren't working out, then yeah, you can make a change. But changing things mid-season, I'm not too sure, because it didn't feel like it wasn't like Ulster last year where people are thinking like the head coach is just on a different planet. you know um Whereas with this one, it was a big shock, honestly, to see that Roundtree went. There's still lots of speculation about why he went, because it doesn't make sense on the results, honestly. So we'll have to see, when things come out about that. But this is another one, I think, head versus heart, because the Lions have been brilliant this season. Munster very, I was going to say up and down, but mostly down, honestly. Like starting out with a 2-point win against Connacht, which again, I don't think they actually deserved to win that one. I think Connacht did enough to get a draw, though we don't see that many draws in rugby. Then, that shock loss against Zebre, where they had, the weird thing was, like, they fell behind. They had that warning sign. It wasn't like Zebre kind of ambushed them. They had that warning sign. They worked their way back into the lead by half time, and then they imploded in the second half. So definite signs of something wrong there. Then they bounced back, beat Ospreys comfortably, but then 3 defeats in a row. Like, weren't really competitive against Leinster when they lost in that one in Croke Park. Then losing against the Stormers as well, and then losing against the Sharks, as they went down to South Africa. So, if Roundtree had been there, you would have been thinking, okay, well, we want to see a reaction. We want to see, um, a better performance against the Lions, because you look at the Lions have had a brilliant start to the season, and it's great to see as well, because talking about it before, where it feels like they're seen as the other South African team, because we've always had the Stormers and the Bulls right up there, being competitive, being in finals. Bulls beating finalists last year. They were in the inaugural finals well against the Stormers, and Stormers were the inaugural champions as well. And then Stormers in the final 2 seasons ago as well. And then we had the Sharks, who lifted the first European trophy for South African side last year too. So then it does feel like the Lions are considered the other South African team. So good to see them doing well. Started with, obviously the South African team started in round two, but in round two, comfortable win against Ulster, then really comfortable win against Edinburgh, beat the Dragons by 4 points, but still a win, and then sneaking over the line against Zebre as well. And then the first defeat of the season then against Leinster, but in regular season, most teams honestly are going to lose to Leinster just because of the depth that they have. But still, fourth place in the league, doing really well. The Ulster could obviously leapfrog them if they win, or if Ulster win and Munster win, sorry, I should say. And But for Munster themselves, like, even if winning this one, it's going to be touch and go whether they can, get up into the top eight. I have a feeling if they win, they're going to be around about 9th, 10th place in the league, and they're going to have to back it up over Christmas with a good run as well. So again, another one that's difficult to call. I'm leaning very much for Lions win, but I'm going to back Munster to kind of bounce back because of those factors of, that upheaval there. I think, Munster, that squad are going to come together and they're going to produce something here, and hopefully in Europe as well. So we're going to go for a Munster win in that one. And then the final game of the round is Zebre versus Ospreys. So it's a 7:35 kickoff as well. It's at 16th versus 14th, so bottom of the table clash here. It's at the Stadio Sergio Lanfranchi, and it's important really for both teams because Zebre have a chance to get actually 2 wins in a URC season, which we haven't seen. I don't know, we certainly haven't seen in the URC era for them. And Ospreys, who were like the leading Welsh team last year, got themselves into the playoff with that miracle run towards the end, have been nowhere near that level this year as well. So, I think for both teams, a lot riding on this one. So, talk about Zebre, lose to Cardiff by 5 points again. Cardiff were kind of cruising in that, and Zebre came back and made it look close towards the end. Then that brilliant win against Munster. Then they lose heavily against the Stormers and against Glasgow after that as well. Then a 1 point defeat to the Lions, and thinking, okay, they got a bit more steel back in them, but then lose pretty heavily against the Scarlets after that as well. So not a great run for them, like in the last 4 games. Only one game where they were competitive, and then the Ospreys, they lost against the Dragons in their opener, which was a bit of a shock result, honestly, given how both those teams went last year. Then, beating the Stormers in the Stormers' first game of the season looked like, okay, well, maybe the Dragons was just a blip, but then they lose heavily against Munster. They lose by 10 points to the Bulls. They lose, quite heavily against Ulster as well. And then they get that win against Edinburgh, which again was a bit of a shock result because Edinburgh looked like out of the two teams were the one that were kind of on their way back up. So yeah, this is a tough one to predict. And when you think of it, like, Zebre players and Ospreys players, they neither kind of provided a bulk of their national teams squads, but they still had players in those squads. And neither, like Italy didn't have the best November in terms of the internationals they played, but it certainly was better than Wales. And I think Zebre at home certainly are a different prospect over the last couple of seasons, and I feel like this is a game that they've been looking at and be thinking, okay, if we're gonna win, if we're gonna get multiple wins in a season, this is one of our best chances to do it. This game here, so I think they're gonna target this in a big way, and because of that, I'm gonna go for a Zebre win. So I'm gonna cut this one here in a second because my nose is like it's running so badly, like it's crazy. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments. We will have a preview of Ireland versus Australia coming up tomorrow as well. Hopefully this has dried up a little bit by then. But yeah, let me know what you think down below.